In the Olivet Discourse, recorded in Matthew 24 and 25, Christ told his disciples about all the things that would happen before his return at the end of the age. Then in a parable in chapter 25, the parable of the 10 virgins, he told them when the church would wake up and realize that the coming was soon. Now let's read an excerpt from the parable of the 10 virgins. At that time, the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. The bridegroom was a long time in coming, and they all fell asleep. At midnight, the cry rang out, "See, the bridegroom is coming. Come out to meet him." Then all 10 virgins woke up. Now let's break this parable down into its pieces to see precisely what Christ is telling us about these 10 virgins and when they wake up. At that time, which is to be the time of the end, the kingdom of heaven, which is the household of God, will be like 10 virgins who escaped to meet the bridegroom, which is Christ. So first we're told that the bridegroom, that's Christ, was a long time in coming. Well, Christ has been gone for almost 2,000 years. And during this time, the whole church fell asleep with regard to the second coming, the prophecies about the time of the end, and all the things that God has told his people that they need to be aware of and that they need to be alert to so they're not deceived about the things required of them for his return and the second coming. So the church had fallen asleep. But then it says, at midnight, which would indicate during the time of the end sometime, a cry rang out. Now this from the Greek word kroge means an outcry, a tumult, grief, crying, clamor, wailing in distress, a cry for vengeance. In other words, this is a great cry. Something terrible has happened in the world, and there's a great outcry, and this wakes up the church. As many of you know, that I believe that the first seal of Revelation is already opened, and that was opened on 9/11/2001. I also believe the second seal, which is World War III, will open very soon, and this is 2008. This passage says at midnight, sometime during the time of the end, this is an indication, a cry rang out, a cry of grief. I believe this to be the second seal of Revelation in Revelation 6:4. So I believe that the second seal of Revelation, which we know will start World War, there will be an outcry of grief, a wailing and crying. This is what alerts the church to the time of the end. And then the church realizes and knows that the time of the end has come. And we see this in Matthew 25:6, where it says, "See, the bridegroom is coming." So when the church wakes up at the second seal of Revelation, we're told to come out and meet him, Christ. But the word is ex erchomai, which means to escape, flee to safety, come out of her, flee from her, depart. Another passage about the time of the end, recorded in Revelation 18, says the same thing. Come out, ex erchomai, of Babylon the Great, my people, so that you will not receive any of her plagues and her judgments. So at this time, then, all the virgins, the whole church, woke up to the time of the end. And I believe this is at the second seal of Revelation 6:4, and it's World War III starting at the hands of somebody, a leader in the Middle East. So here's how I'm interpreting this portion of the parable of the 10 virgins when they all wake up. But Christ had been gone a long time, and the whole church had fallen asleep. During the time of the end, a great cry of grief rang out, and the church awoke. Then they realized that the end had begun, and they fled to safety to meet the returning Christ. I believe this outcry of grief will occur when the second seal of Revelation is opened. Then the whole church will wake up to the time of the end and the second coming of Christ. Once again, let me alert you and warn you that this presentation is an interpretation of a parable by man. You need to personally read the Bible yourself, Matthew 25, to determine if you believe this interpretation to be correct. Because God says we are to follow Him, we're not to follow any man. Man can help one another, but we must follow God and adhere to His Word.